All right, we're just getting into that pre-spawn migration where the bass are coming up from the winter areas to where they're going to spawn. And what we need to do right now is try to intercept them. So you have to think about where they're going to be. And they're going to end up in the flats. They're going to end up in those protected bays and those shallows where they're going to spawn later on. They were in their wintering areas, which is those deep areas where there's humps and long tapering points that go right to a river channel and then drop right off. Those deep areas that they're going to hang out in a structure where they're going to be all winter long. Well, they're coming from there and they're going to those spawning areas, and they're somewhere in between. We need to intercept them. So look for those contours, those ridges, those ledges, those creek channels, especially if there's a creek, it swings into the shoreline and comes along a steep bank, those steeper banks and stuff. That's going to be areas where they're going to use as a trail, as a pathway up to the shallows, those deep weed lines moving up to shallower weed lines. So a great bait to use during that time is the underspin, right? The underspin is this little thing right here. Look at that. Okay. Underspin is pretty dang cool. It's a little minnow bait, and it imitates forage. They're going to feed on that. This is a gamakatsu underspin jig head. It's a 1/4 ounce, and I'm using a rage tail, a rage swimmer on it. This is a real subtle type bait, because it still is cold. You use this when the water temps are like 47 to 52, somewhere in there, the upper 40s, lower 50s. So the bass are still not super active, and neither are the bait. And so the bait isn't moving real active. So this is a real subtle, the boot tail moves real slow, and you just bring it along at a slow pace, just enough to get this blade to spin. And you can fish it over the tops of trees, over the tops of humps and rock piles where the fish may be suspended, or along tapering points that have scattered boulders, stumps, laydowns, that sort of thing. The cool thing about this is you can fish it from about mid-depth all the way down to the bottom, just depending on where the bass are going to be that day. So you can cover a wide range of depths and cover in areas where they're going to be at, just searching for bass and finding them. And once you do, you can get into them pretty thick. They kind of are still bunched up right now, and you can catch a bunch on the underspin. Use a 7-foot medium power fast action rod with 12-pound fluorocarbon line on it. That's really your staple for fishing this bait. You get a little bit lighter line, a little bit lighter rod limber, so you can get it out there really far, get it down there as deep as you want, and then reel it nice and slow. And the fish hit it. They don't normally thump it that hard. And the hooks are on that gamakatsu rig are super sharp. So you just lean into it and reel down. It's not a super hard hook set. And you got them. They're there, right? So that's a great way in the early part of the pre-spawn period. Once the bass start getting up shallow and they start getting into those shallower areas, they start to get up into the cover, and they start to nestle up in those weeds, brush piles, sunken timber, or laydowns, stumps, anything that's in the shallow areas, and that open hook starts to become a problem. So that's when I switch over to the Neko rig. The Neko rig, in this instance, I'm using this rig, this setup. Look at this. This is really cool. I'm using the gamakatsu cover Neko hook. So it is weedless. It's not going to get hung up. Plus, it's got a swivel on it. Neko rigs are notorious for spinning and causing a lot of line twists. So that swivel here really prevents that. Plus, it gives it a more natural look as it falls through the water column. And then I just got this is a Missile Baits magic worm. This is the morning magic, I think is what they call it. Just this purple color. Man, these bass, they just love it this time of year. I don't know what it is about this color. There's nothing about it in nature that's really that color, but boy, they really like it this time of year. And then I just got a Missile Baits Neko weight on here. I start with a 1/16 ounce. And I'll heavy up if it's too windy, or if we're fishing a little bit deeper, then I'll go maybe an 1/8 ounce or maybe even close to a 1/4 ounce. But really a 1/16 is going to do your job for you, because what this is a real subtle type of way of fishing. When the bass aren't real active, they're not really chasing down food, and they're not going after your crankbaits and spinnerbaits, this is the ticket. This is when those fish are up, moving up. These water temps are still going to be low 50s, maybe mid 50s now. You got a lot of fronts coming through during the springtime, and they're just going to bury up in that cover. And this is what you can use to a real subtle presentation to dig them out. Okay. Now, the rod and reel is the same thing. Again, 7-foot medium power fast action rod. Instead of using 12-pound fluorocarbon line, now I'll move up to 15-pound. There's a little bit heavier cover. Not braid. I won't use braid in this instance, because I'm not really getting into super heavy cover. You're just, the weeds are still, they're just beginning to grow. So it's not real thick. So the braid is kind of overkill in this instance, and the braid might inhibit the action of it. The fluorocarbon sinks, and it's going to sink along with this rig, so it gives you all that sensitivity you need. So those are the two rigs that my go-to rigs that I use during the pre-spawn. If you're going to just narrow down what you're going to be using this year, use those two, and you're going to find yourself a lot of success. Hope that helps. For more tips and tricks like this, visit bassresource.com.